More than a third of software executives have adopted AI for application generation, and 69% say it has increased developer productivity, according to a recent study conducted by OutSystems and KPMG. However, AI is deployed in silos, which creates fragmented workflows, governance gaps, and unnecessary complexity. Most are treating AI agent development like legacy software. Same budgets, same timelines, same failure traps. We all know how that ends. Badly. These agents need to learn, adapt, and operate in complex Fortune 500 level environments with appropriate thresholds around things like security and compliance, which requires a different approach. So, how do you actually architect AI agents for scale while ensuring enterprise-grade compliance? I'm Tom Chavez, and joining me today is Whitson Martin, CEO of OutSystems, the AI-powered low-code development platform. If you've ever seen AI agents go from proof of concept to production, Whitson and his company have likely designed the scaffolding. So today we're going to dig into how deterministic operator-led AI development tools beat vibe coding and how to build platforms that last beyond your first pilot. Whitson, so great to have you with us. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Tom. It's awesome to reconnect with you this way.
Well, speaking of reconnecting, Whitson, let's go back a little bit here. You know, you and I bumped into each other, and by the way, my chronology is always terrible. I don't know, 15 years ago or thereabouts, 10 years ago. It's all a blur. How do we remind me?
Yeah, I mean, it was when Salesforce had purchased ExactTarget. We were first sort of getting into the world of business to consumer marketing. You and Vivek were running Crux and growing like crazy. And we learned about, I mean, I think it was actually at the Cannes Lions Festival or something I first heard about Crux. And we were, you know, we found the company, we found you guys, we were super impressed with the work you were doing, the team you'd built. And we realized we had a ton to learn about B2C scale data. And I think that was, the beginning of of bringing the two companies together. But that's where it all started. And then I think it was a couple of years later before paths crossed again, completely different kind of technology problem where I was working with a nonprofit called Mobile Pathways, and you and your sister leaned in to help support some of the work we were doing to help use mobile technology to help immigrants access immigration justice. So thank you for that support. But it's been good to work with you in a couple of different contexts over the years.
I know. Wait, I'm flashing back to that moment in the Crusette. Whitson, you took me right there. That's when we first started the conversations between Salesforce and Crux that evolved eventually into the acquisition of Crux by Salesforce, and you were instrumental there. I remember those conversations vividly. And as you say, Salesforce was wrapping its head around these new kinds of B2C use cases and data patterns that we had employed. And you were so fundamental, I think, in helping a company like Salesforce, which is heavily anchored in B2B, but with a whole different kind of data model, ushering them into the land of data management platforms and customer data platforms and the like. So.
Well, we had a lot to learn in those days, so it was great. We learned a lot from your team.
Well, and then it's just so cool for me, Whitson, because it's just not every day when I get to work with somebody like you, who is an uber techie and super mega talented industry executive, but who also cares deeply about matters of immigration justice and the like. I remember many people will talk about it. And I am going to give you some big ups here, so don't blush, Whitson. But I just find that so many people will talk about these things. I remember vividly you're going down to the border and really doing the work, which was just incredibly impressive then as today. I know you care deeply about all of these topics, and you're absolutely doing the work. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I believe very strongly, whether it's in philanthropic work or it's in business, you got to get out there and you got to see the problems, for real in the real world and learn. That's one of the things I love most about my job as CEO at OutSystems is the opportunity to really get out there, dig into hard problems that our customers are working to solve. And, people use OutSystems. Companies use OutSystems to build custom software where the stuff they can buy off the shelf just doesn't cut it. Really hard problems and challenging scenarios where they need something that's tailor-made for just their thing. And we really have an amazing opportunity in this business to learn a ton, and I just love it. And so, I've always been one who wanted to get out there and see the real world and the real problems. And that's just what kind of, builds my fire and drives me forward.
Well, so let's go into that, because there is an awful lot of talky talk out there about agentic AI. And it strikes me that a lot of companies are conducting experiments, which is important, right? That's how these technology cycles unfold. You got to jump in the water and splash around. But it seems like there's an awful lot of AI theater, let's call it, right? Everyone's doing the talky talk. Everyone is buzzword compliant. How do you see OutSystems and just the broader market approaching the bigger challenge of adoption that takes us from pilot to production?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, this is one of the most talked about things today, anywhere. We see a steady progression of news on this front. I think even go back a month ago, all the news, and the KPMG is doing a regular report on progress of AI adoption and agentic adoption, is like, oh, everything's stuck in pilot. This month, they just came up with another thing like, oh, no, 30% of things are actually getting to production, seeing real value. I think there is just a huge spectrum of success and failure out there. I think what we're learning suddenly, how are we learning this again? Same exact thing we've learned so many times, is actually we have to try a lot of things and iterate and fail fast and try more things to really get to find the use cases where agents make a lot of sense and actually make a big difference. We see it's actually pretty hard for companies. We're all pioneering in this space to figure out what are agents actually good at. Where do we still need people to do the job or part of the jobs? How do the agents help the people do those parts of the jobs? And we see a lot of oscillation in our customer base between, hey, giving this work to an agent. Oop, no, pulling that back because it's actually something we need human in the loop for. Okay, now we need to rebalance that work between the two. So it's a ton of iteration, and iteration is hard in this space, right? Like it's not like for most companies today, all of their elements of their agentic solutions are all baked neatly into one platform. I mean, that's one thing our customers like about OutSystems is we've got a lot of these things in one platform. You can manage the life cycle of your data and your agents and, the prompts you're guiding them with and the human experiences, right? Like the UX of your applications and your websites. And you can actually manage all of those things as a bundle and take them through a life cycle, which makes it a heck of a lot easier to experiment, right? And so I do think the real question, as you're looking to get real value out of investment in agents in a business, is how fast can you move, learn, adapt, try again. And we've just been through a product cycle, a new product introduction for a new version of our agent platform. We call it Agent Workbench. And our customers have told us that's the number one thing they value most, is like, it's all in one platform. I can manage this life cycle easily. And they're comparing that to the project they did, a month ago, where, they've got the data in one system, they've got all their agents in another, the websites and the customer experiences are all built in custom code. They're iterating through different cycles. Like, I got to get my, agent, my app through the app store process. I got to get my website, coordinating all of that. Knowing what you're even testing can be really hard. So I think, that's one of the things that we're definitely learning, is a platform approach to the iteration, and the learning really speeds up the identification of real hyper valuable agentic use cases in the enterprise.
Yeah. And you're taking a low code approach, and I can say low code, no code solutions have been very good to so many of us. But agentic AI adds a layer of unpredictability. In a prior podcast, I spent a little time talking about non-determinism in LLMs, right?
Yeah.
Which as consumers, and many consumers aren't aware, I like to tell people, hey, go to ChatGPT, ask it the same thing you asked yesterday. And it's funny to see how people are so sort of flummoxed by, oh my God, that's not the same thing it told me yesterday. Of course it's not. But in enterprise, that's really tricky, right? So I'm wondering, because if enterprise users can't handle this kind of crazy oscillation, so I'm curious,
Yeah.
how do you, what kind of architectural choices have you
Yeah.
guys doubled on at OutSystems to
Yeah.
ensure that these don't crumble?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, a lot of our customers are operating in heavily regulated industries where the sort of different answer every day doesn't quite cut it. And so, what we're seeing, and I think one of the values of really marrying, the concept of vibe coding, the concept of non-determinism, the concept of agentic systems with the classic deterministic systems companies have been building on platforms like OutSystems for decades. And we're really giving customers the choice through the definition of something we call agentic workflows, right? Here's the step in the process where we want the agent reasoning and learning and improving. And here's the step in the process where we want the agent to pick from 3 approved templates for the email
Yeah,
communication back to the
right.
customer after some decision got made, right? And so classic example of this, this is really interesting for me in this role. I've been 5 months in the job at OutSystems as CEO, replaced the founder CEO here back in May. And I've been having lots of conversations with customers about, the agentic systems they are putting in place. And there's so many patterns I'm seeing recur across industries and across geographies. But one of the most common is just people applying for something and managing the process of approving that thing. So classic example that we're all kind of familiar with, or many of us anyway, the mortgage application, right? Like I'm trying to buy a house. I'm in a hurry. I go out and I apply for a mortgage with maybe 2, 3, 4 lenders, and I'm trying to get an answer as quick as possible so that I can put in an offer and win, right? Especially people in trying to do that in the Bay Area know how competitive that process can be,
Good luck. Yeah.
right? So, if you're a mortgage lender, the process, the origination process, the process of taking those applications, running them through the underwriting process, checking that all the documents are the right one. Is that the right side of your pay stub you scanned before you, you know, turned it to a PDF and submitted it on the website? The checking the actual contents of those documents. Do they comply with the underwriting policies? Enriching the profiles of the applicants so you can go out and grab their credit score from a third-party service. When you think about that work, it's extraordinarily routine. Much of that work can easily be done by software agents that can, read the PDFs, scan through them, compare them to others that are standard, compare those to policies that are stored in my, SharePoint system in my, wherever my policy repository is. And that's good agentic work. We have seen so many customers who have been able to dramatically shorten the cycle and therefore improve the productivities of those underwriting teams by automating key portions of that work. But none of them want to turn that relationship with the applicant over to an AI. They're like, okay, now these people who understand our ideal customer profile, who understand our policy, and who can engage with these customers to provide a service in the process instead of being stuck purely processing, grunt work, allows them to really scale. We've got a customer in India who is running a low-income mortgage finance business where there's been an explosion in mortgage applications because of government policies subsidizing interest rates and encouraging homeownership. And they've been able to keep up with that and compete on the relationship front by really automating a lot of the underwriting work on the back end. And so it's kind of cool to see these processes and see the companies going through figuring out what works best, what doesn't work, where do the humans really need to play an important role in managing relationships with customers. And I think they're at like 2% of those applications need human intervention before the interaction with the customer. So I don't know. That's pretty cool, exciting progress to see.
it is exciting. And I think it's such an important point because in all the excitement around AI, I, I find that too many people are kind of losing the plot and trying to weed out the human dimension, right? We're not ready in most cases to go fully autonomous. There is going to be a human in the loop. Well, that's a necessary, like we have to hold on to that. It's not a nuisance. It's a design imperative,
I mean,
right?
I think about that personally all the time. I mean, of course, we all probably think about this from our own perspective, but you know, I am not, my favorite part of my job is meeting with my customers. I'm not going to turn that job over to an AI. But
Yeah.
I do use an AI every day to help me prepare for every conversation that I have with every customer, to do research about them, about their industry, about other customers of ours who are solving similar problems to the ones that they have using our technology, helping me become a much more relevant uh, communicator
Right.
when I'm in front of a customer. And I think a lot about how we're using AI to drive human productivity. And I don't think that the key roles in most of our businesses are going to become entirely driven by agents. I think they're going to allow us to really focus on the highest value work in a business and automate the stuff that's non-differentiating.
I have told people a lot lately. Listen, if by AI you mean if the A stands for augmented, as in augmented intelligence, in other words, AI that makes me smarter or that makes human beings faster, smarter, cooler, stronger, all in, right? So it's not this either or thing that I think a lot of people get stuck on. It's a both and for it's not going to be the case. Look, in some places there's an awful lot of scut work that needs to be automated through AI. Those are big. There are big gains to be gotten there.
Sure.
But it's this kind of straddle that we're going to be living in for a while, and again, not a nuisance from my perspective, but a very good thing, and it's a design imperative for guys like you and me. Speaking of speaking of that, let's talk a little bit about vibe coding.
Yeah, there's an area
Okay?
where AI is certainly can have an impact on productivity.
So let's talk about that. And
Yeah,
by the way, you and I wallow in this stuff all day long. So let's back it up, if you would, Woodson, for people who have heard the term but aren't quite sure what it means. Unpack what is vibe coding, and what does it portend for enterprise grade
yeah.
AI
Well, vibe
development.
coding is an intoxicating experience. Really, it's usually defined by a conversation with an AI agent, the way you talk to Chat GPT on the website today or on the app on your phone. Except instead of asking it to help you with your homework, you're asking it to build you software.
Right.
And it's amazing what you can do. It's a totally intoxicating experience, really, to build your first software application with through this model, through vibe coding. And it's an interactive experience. And some of these tools for vibe coding are beautiful, really help you build things, give you an immediate look at the concept, allow you to rapidly build prototypes of applications. And that process is a game changer in so many parts of the software development lifecycle because, you know, our customers spend a huge portion of their custom software development cycles figuring out what they really want. Like the process of defining a software product, as you know, you've hired lots of UX designers and then product managers and software engineers over time. Like there's a lot of iteration that happens in the process to try and figure out what's right, and testing and trying things. And we've now got a model with vibe coding where a lot of that can happen through this conversational interface, and it's truly powerful. And I think one side of the effect of that in the enterprise and the world in general is we're probably generating hundreds of thousands of times more code today, every day, because of this phenomenon than at any prior time in life. I'm pretty sure since the vibe coding term, I think, was defined first in February of this year, 2025.
Right.
I'm guessing
Right.
that since February and now, there's probably been more lines of software written than in all the rest of human history. Like, it's unbelievable the pace. Now that's exciting because it unleashes potential, but it's also scary. If you're a chief information security officer for a large enterprise, and suddenly you realize that everyone in the company is writing software, and a lot of that software is interacting with some of your core systems, your data, the documents, the proprietary information inside your enterprise. And you're like, whoa, what is going on? And you look at some of the code that gets generated, the experience can be awesome, but sometimes under the covers, you're like, whoa, this is a lot of spaghetti. It looks like the result of 17 disconnected conversations, right?
Right.
I have a good friend,
Wow.
lives in the Bay Area, and I was talking to him literally last night as I was waiting in the Boston airport for an airplane. And I was like, how's your weekend? He's like, great. And I built a, 3-tier web app overnight to share with my neighbors all the data we're collecting from the neighborhood security cameras that we've installed. They've been having break-ins in the neighborhood. And he's like sharing the story of what he built. I was like, how'd you build it? Did you build it in OutSystems? He's like, no. I built it with an AI, and I used a bunch of my back-end services, BigQuery from Google, blah, blah, blah. He's leaving all this stuff. I'm like, awesome. Sounds great. I'm like, you got it all done in a day? He's like, I did, but I've created myself a mountain of tech debt. This thing that I've created will work for today, but I know as soon as I give this to my neighbors, they're all going to have 35 things they're going to ask me for it. And I've just created myself a nightmare. I need an OutSystems to make this manageable. And I do think that there is, a huge opportunity for a company like OutSystems, which for literally 24 years has been building a platform that let that chief information security officer, the CIO of some of the world's largest companies, put the innovation in core enterprise systems into the hands of business people and sometimes, junior software developers to go out and build enterprise systems that produce mission critical functionality that expose, internal data safely to customers and partners to drive, effective business process. To do that, you need a lot of safeguards built into those platforms, right? Yeah. The whole thing has to be highly observable. You have to be able to manage it. You have to be able to manage the life cycle. You have to be able to fix a bug pretty fast if you have one and run it through the life cycle of the development and testing into production. And there's a whole lot of infrastructure behind these kind of enterprise systems. And what we're finding with Mentor, which is our AI for enterprise vibe coding, which allows me to have that conversation with the AI to develop my application, but then the actual generation of the code that turns it into software that can run is a deterministic system that's got 24 years of hardening, so that we know that given the same instructions every time, we'll generate exactly the same functionality, exactly the same code under the hood. So we think of vibe coding and this intoxicating experience as being something that just drives demand for like real mature software development platforms under the covers, at least in the enterprise. And so that's where we're focused, and that's what we're excited about.
That's exactly right. You and I have been doing software for a long time. Vibe coding is like a first date, and it can be intoxicating and really fun, right? The kinds of work that it takes to robustify and ensure an enterprise-grade software application, that's a marriage, right? And it's a lot of work. And so I think it's a really apt point, Woodson, because look, and we're seeing the speed up, and I'm not poo-pooing it.
Yeah, no, all for it.
It's amazing. And there's a lot of not so sexy pieces that go into delivering an enterprise-grade application. And so I'm glad to see, OutSystems is doing that work. We're trying to take it very seriously in our shop as well.
Software architecture matters, right? Like I think we know that, right? When you've built systems that had to scale for Black Friday, workloads, right? Like in the enterprise, it really does matter how you architect the systems, where you build in the safeguards, that all the parts are really well understood, that the interfaces are well defined between the components so that, when and where you have problems, you have alternatives. And it's a discipline for a reason. And I don't think it goes away. I think these tools help us be more productive. And, vibe coding tools today are great on the front end user experiences and help with the definition of functional requirements. We're not really there where they are doing all the work on all the non-functional requirements, like the deep security work, et cetera. But I think we'll see progress in all these domains, and we're excited. We're building all those things in to our platform. We've been doing machine learning and AI in the OutSystems platform for more than a decade. And now with generative and with agentic, it's just a whole new ball game, and it's incredibly exciting.
Whitson, I wanted to come back to something you touched on earlier. You mentioned that you were treating iteration as kind of a first-class citizen of the OutSystem platform, right? In other words, it's not just a mindset or a habit. It's a built-in fundamental part of the value proposition. So I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about the KPIs and metrics that matter, right? How do you ensure value? How do you measure the value and speed of iteration with an AI augmented solution?
Yeah. I mean, I think there are 2 points here I'd make. One is, I think it's so important as we're all experimenting with these both new ways of software delivery, but also new types of systems we're delivering, right? Think agentic systems. I think it's just super important as we go into these projects, we're going in with a clear sense of what we're trying to accomplish. I think establishing our KPIs up front is what allows us to iterate and learn, right? If we don't know what we're optimizing for, it's hard to make any progress or know whether we did. And so I think there's just a discipline that's as important today as it ever was, maybe more important now because of the pace at which we move, that we have clarity on where we're aiming. And, that can get quite granular. But I think in many ways, the way we're measuring it here at OutSystems and the way most of our customers are trying to measure impact really boils down to productivity as a measure. And productivity is obviously a measure of one thing per something else, quite often revenue per employee or something of that nature. I think employees, the denominator, matters a lot. And I think, as I said earlier, I think employees matter. People matter in our businesses and are going to continue to, but we can drive extraordinary improvements there. So I would say, in particular, when I think about both enterprise vibe coding and how we do more faster, it's in that realm. Productivity improvement per developer is a really interesting concept. So we've got thousands of customers. Many of our largest customers organize their work into centers of excellence. They've got OutSystems centers of excellence. They've got developers who are highly skilled in our platform. And they think about how much productivity can I get in my business, in my workforce. So we got a company called Oceaneering. They build applications on our platform that field service technicians use on oil rigs to go out and do safety inspections to ensure that to minimize the risk of injury or accident in those environments. Super mission critical work in their business. So they think about those people who they're sending out on helicopters. Those are expensive rides out on the oil rigs. How much can they get done? And then you think about how much can they get done on a visit relative to what they could do before, and how does the team we're deploying to build the systems to deliver, to make them more productive, right? To make it faster, to make the camera on the mobile device do more of the work instead of the technician doing the description, for example. And how does that productivity improvement pan out when I then go measure that in aggregate against the people who are doing the work to improve the systems? And so I think these are the kinds of measures that we're really able to work toward in the software factories inside enterprises because of, the platform approach. And we can look at how we did. We got all the measures of all the activity from last release to this release and what's improving and how is the work making an impact. So that's the exciting kind of work where our customers are really truly optimizing. That's the fun stuff to see.
Absolutely. Well, Woodson, you've done executive level management, you've led product and sales teams, and now you're delivering AI powered apps at scale. I'm wondering if you could share one mistake in go to market that, with the benefit of hindsight, you go back and fix. Again, the Monday quarterbacking is always a little perilous, but we're always learning every day here. And I find that the go to market challenges, you can fix the product problems with enough time and enough of the right people.
Yeah.
The go to market problems are always the gnarliest.
I mean, I think it's the intersection of the two, honestly. If I were to say, where have I made the mistakes? Where have I seen the mistakes made most? It's really when we let the sales and the product teams and all the people who help both like drift apart, right, into a different world where the message we're delivering in the field, maybe through expedience, maybe somebody's perceiving it as a fast path to revenue, but it's really misaligned with the work we're doing in the product to deliver the best outcome for the customer. And I think in a world like ours, which is a sales-led growth company, most of my career has been in that domain. It's just the most important thing to drive that kind of alignment religiously, work hard at it. That's why we invest in the enablement work so heavily in the field. We all need to be telling the same story, aiming in the right direction so that we're getting the outcomes for our customers that they're betting on. And I think that's probably for me, and I've seen it happen so many times, and it's easy to happen, right? The cycles are different, right? We often work in the sales cycle on the month or the quarter. The product cycle's different, and it's easy for the people operating in each of those domains to find themselves pretty far apart.
Yeah.
And I think leadership is key there. That's what management's for. We make sure everybody stays on the same page. All the oars are pulling in the same direction.
Here. Listen, I mean, you feel like you do think this for a while and you learn some things, and it's just fascinating, right? How that continues to be the central challenge across just about every company that we build over here at Superset. I mean, that sure resonates, right? I tell people, like, look, any bit of daylight between our product and engineering teams and customer sales functions is dangerous, right? Like we can't have our
It's
engineers.
an easy way to misset expectations, right? On all sides. So I think that just continuous work there is super important. Enablement's key. What an important function in these companies.
Every day. Hey, Woodson, let's move to our lightning round where I'm going to ask you a few quick hitting questions. Are you game?
Yeah, sure. Love it.
Let's jump in. So could you share a piece of advice you wish somebody had given you early in the journey of building enterprise AI solutions?
Yeah, everything you see on LinkedIn is BS. I mean, I don't know if you've been having this phenomenon, but like there is so much hype happening in our world today. We are, all the vendors, all pitching all the time. Everything's a breakthrough every day. Just like, seriously, spend way more time talking to customers about actual problems and way less like fear factor on the insanity, the pace of change. I think that's probably my number one.
100%. Woodson, I could not agree more. There's the hype to content ratio has gotten hopelessly out of control. I came of age in San Francisco in the 90s, and it was fun. Um, when with all of these breathless things that people are saying on panels and LinkedIn posts and the like, it just reminds me of like that, those crazy times in clubs where everyone's drunk and high, and you just wish somebody would put the baggie down and just let's
The good
live
news
here up.
is there are lots of real people with real challenges they're trying to solve in real businesses around the
Yeah,
world who are not completely drunk on the hype, and you can go talk to them instead and probably be a lot more successful.
absolutely. Hey, what's your favorite team building ritual?
I love the old fashioned offsite. We just had one for my team out in Half Moon Bay. I love the fire pit. I just love the getting out of our day to day context, gathering in person, breaking bread together. I just think there's no substitute for that. And I think the other one is that you'll recognize is I'm still a sucker for a V2 mom as a team building exercise.
Okay, so for listeners who don't know what a V2 mom is,
Yeah, V2 Mom is a methodology for managing a company goals. It's like a goal framework. You could think about it as kind of like uh, a OKR style framework, but it stands for vision, values, methods, obstacles, measures, and those five elements: vision, what do you want? Values, what's important to you as you pursue it? Methods, what do you have to do to get what you want? Obstacles, what makes it hard? Measures, how we know if we're successful? It's now a pretty well understood methodology out there. And I think it really helps to drive aligned execution, which is what I'm all about.
awesome to see you bringing the tablets down the mountain and carrying that approach forward at OutSystems. That's awesome. Where do you
We're
go
having
when you need to think? When you
Fallen
when you
Leaf
need
Lake.
to Oh, that's specific. Where's that?
Fallen Leaf Lake is a small lake just south of the south shore of Lake Tahoe. It's only about 3/4 of a mile from Kiva Beach, if you know where that is on Tahoe. It's a small lake.
Okay.
We have a little cabin there. It's right on the edge of the Desolation Wilderness, which is the other half of my answer to your question. Because the Desolation Wilderness, as you might guess from its name, is highly remote. It's incredibly beautiful space. Um, and it is a place where you can go really into the silence. There's no mechanized vehicles or power tools or anything. It's humans and pack animals, and that's about all you get. It's spectacularly
Oh,
beautiful, and it's just for me the best place to clear my head.
beautiful. How long a drive is that from San Francisco, say?
To the trailhead near Fallen Leaf Lake into Desolation Wilderness, it's probably 4 to 4.5 hours. The last stretch of which is a very bumpy road. You definitely want a 4-wheel drive.
All right. Well, I'll have to check it out one of these days. One last question. If you had your younger entrepreneurial self with us on this podcast, what's the one hard truth you would share?
Yeah, invest in your mentor relationships. Fight hard to keep them. There is nothing more important. You get to like, I'm the CEO of a company. Uh, you you need a lot of help in this job, and mentors matter a ton. And sometimes it's the people you learned lessons from a long time ago in your career who you need most when you least expect it. I think just keep those relationships alive. They matter more than anything else.
It's great advice. Well, Whitson, that wraps up this episode of the closed session. I'm really grateful to you for being with us today. Thank you, Whitson.
Thank you, Tom.
If you'd like to contact Whitson, you can find his LinkedIn profile in our show notes or at closedsessionpod.com. You can also visit his company website at outsystems.com. If you haven't already subscribed and want a regular stream of research and insights in your podcast feed, hit that subscribe button now, or follow us on wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube. All right, that's all for today. But until next time, keep cranking, keep building.